Okay, the next bout of myth busting is the hardware versus software plugins debate. So when we're mixing, you can either use hardware, which are separate components such as an external compressor or equalizer, or you can use what's known as software plugins, which are bits of software in your computer that run through your DAW and allow you to do the same as the hardware units, but they're much cheaper and much more convenient. So here's the deal. Nowadays, you can create world-leading music with only software plugins. Yeah, if you spend 10 grand on a classic vintage compressor piece of hardware, you might hear a slight difference from if you had the equivalent software emulation of that hardware compressor. But you probably wouldn't. And even if you did, would it really sound $9,950 better? But that brings me to my next point. Why in the music industry do we idolize the past so much when it comes to hardware? Surely technology has moved on since 1970. If you were in a Formula 1 race, you wouldn't choose to use a 1970 Formula 1 car in a head-to-head against the 2018 model because technology has advanced so much. But really the debate doesn't even matter, as it's not which tools you have so much as how you use them that really matters. And it's this kind of thing that can distract you from the 20% of what is really important. So imagine you were desperately thirsty, you just crawled out of the desert, and someone offered you a glass of water. Now, you could take a sip of water from a 50-cent glass from the local supermarket, or you could take a sip of water from a $5,000 designer glass by Philippe Starck. Now, will you enjoy that water anymore? No, of course not. The 50-cent glass did the job just as well as the $5,000 glass. And it's the same as software plugins versus hardware. Now, it certainly wasn't always like that, but because of advances in technology, the power of computers and the skill of programmers, the difference between software and hardware is becoming indistinguishable. Have a think about it this way. If you give a fantastic mix engineer the stock plugins from your DAW, or you gave someone who's completely new to mixing all of the best hardware that's ever existed, who do you think's going to come up with a better mix? Exactly. So in this course, we're primarily going to be using the stock plugins of Ableton Live, but it doesn't matter which DAW you're using because you'll have the equivalent plugins in that. We'll also be using a couple of premium plugins, but primarily because they're easier to show you what I'm doing. Which brings me to how do you actually pick your plugins? We'll look at that in the very next video.